Hi, y'all. Today I want to continue in a part two of trauma and secrecy. And some of you may be asking, why would you want to go into this low vibe area? You know, you're supposed to be thinking positive thoughts and creating a positive future. To which I reply that love sometimes needs to meet people where they are. And it's my desire that my sharing will help others move through their traumas because in a trauma, as you can see from this painting, the fear causes you to just to splinter in all different directions. And part of the healing is recovering all parts of yourself. So let's move forward. Um, in the first video, I talked about molestation and abortion and secrecy. And truly, I was not prepared myself for what this vow of silence or secrecy is all about until I made that first video because I'm perfectly okay talking about the traumas. But I didn't know how difficult it was for me to break that vow of silence. So now I move forward to around the age of 20. I grew up in a small town and I had moved to a big city, Houston, Texas. And where I grew up, it was very safe. You know, we didn't lock our houses and we even left the keys in the car. So I was pretty naive about the frequencies or the energies in other places. So I was working in a chemical plant, and I worked 3 shifts a month. You know, a day shift, the 3 to 11, and then the graveyard they called it. And you had like 5 days off. Well, that just totally messes with your body clock for sure. But there was this manager on day shift that addressed me at some point and said that he could possibly help me get on just a straight day job because I was working in the lab. So I thought, well, that's great. And he says, well, come to my place after your shift, which I was working 3 to 11, and we'll talk about it. I thought, well, great. So, boy, I can feel my heart racing as I go to discuss this because for whatever reason, these rapes were the hardest for me to process. But I show up at his apartment and he hands me a drink. And I thought, well, great, you know, we'll just relax. And we were talking and chatting. I can't really remember about what, but it didn't feel hostile in any way. And then suddenly I started feeling very dizzy and not well. So I asked him where his bathroom was. And I went to the bathroom and I went to get up off the toilet and I could barely stand. And I don't know if I called out to him, if he was just there. And he says, well, let me help you. So the bathroom was off the bedroom and he laid me down on this big king size waterbed. And I remember all these huge candles all around the room were lit. But I'm still thinking, well, that's nice. I don't know what's going on. But he had given me I guess you'd call it a roofie because I didn't even know these things existed. A drug that paralyzes you. You're conscious, but you can't move. And it was quite terrifying. And, but I can tell you that I was able to bite his tongue with my teeth. It didn't make him very happy. And at some point, I just passed out. So I wake up the next morning around 8 o'clock. He's face down, passed out on the bed. I'm assuming that that was just a blessing on my part that at some point he did pass out. And I was in pain and bruised, and the candles all around this bedroom had melted, and the wax was dripping down the furniture. Well, all I could do was put my clothes on and get out of there. Now, due to my prior condition, I didn't report it. I just went home and took a shower. And then I fell into what you call a dark night in the soul. Now, I'd always kind of had issues with alcohol where if I consumed too much, I would black out, which means I was continue to function, but I wouldn't remember what I did. Where we grew up, that was kind of what you did. You got some beer and you went out in the woods, and that was how you're partying for the weekend. I wasn't exposed to any other drugs growing up, but I did begin using drugs, and 2 or 3 months later, because I started going out to bars, which I had not really done before, and scanning the bar and picking a male and saying to myself, I'm going to have sex with this guy. Well, on one of these instances, I didn't choose this guy, but I was drunk. And he said, well, I live close to the bar. Why don't you come to my apartment and sleep a little while and then drive home? And I thought, well, that's nice. So he made a move at me at the apartment, and I said, no, I'm not interested in that. And I went to lay down on the couch and fell asleep. Well, I woke to a hand over my mouth and a fairly quick rape. Now, also during this time, I would fall asleep at the wheel while driving. I mean, I had like a death wish at that point. I just couldn't take any more. But I survived, and I lost my train of thought. But I buried these rapes along with other experiences deep, deep down inside of me. And later, in my late 20s, married a narcissist. I mean, I grew up around one, so I married one. And even at that time, there was a part of me that wanted full disclosure, because 2 months before the wedding, I didn't share the rapes because I didn't really remember them, but I wanted to talk to him about my abortion experiences, looking for someone to give me a hug and support. Well, he just totally freaked out. And I should have known then, that was a big red flag, but I continued on with the marriage, and I can tell you that for every week, for about 3 years, he would project his anger and his wounding on me and call me a whore and all other kind of names. Now, there's a part of me that thought I deserved that, But we get divorced in 1999, and I guess we're moving into my 40s. Also, back in that time, my back went out, and I had 2 major back surgeries. One was experimental. I may do that at a separate time, the journey with the back and the spine and fascia and all that. But after the divorce, and then I moved from the house we raised our family in, I was still in Christianity at the time. I had a feeling that I was going to move towards cancer if I didn't do something with my body. So I began colon hydrotherapy because I had chronic bowel issues, and began to cleanse my body. All different kind of cleanses. But it was then, as I look back, it was through these cleansings and getting rid of these, say, parasites, because all this is parasite frequency that I'm talking about, and what happens when you're traumatized, that there are frequencies that attach, that actually feed on the trauma and the fear. So it was when I actually started cleansing and removing these parasites physically from my body that the memories started coming back. So, one other thing is I wanted to say in my 50s, I had left my home state of Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina and had gone to a colon hydrotherapy school and gotten licensed in that, and was seeking to practice in Florida as a colon hydrotherapist because Hurricane Katrina had wiped out the place that I was thinking about opening a practice. And the people I were going to work for, one was a 70-plus-year-old man therapist, and he did work to help the body, I still had the back pain. Well, anyway, long story short, in one of the sessions, he crossed physical boundaries with me, and I froze, just like I had done in a lot of the other traumas. That's what fear can do to you. But it was after this event that I thought, you know what? I've had enough. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to sue this guy because I know I'm not the first female that he has violated. And so I decided to talk to his wife first before moving forward because my intent was to work for them as a colon hydrotherapist. And when I told her, she was not surprised at all and indicated that this had happened before. So I thought, I know I'm on the right track. So I called the police, and believe it or not, there wasn't anything they can do. And I called an attorney and began a 2-year journey of suing this man, to which he never had to give a deposition. I did. But I won. And I took the money, gave some to my adult kids, and took a trip to Egypt. And one day I'll share that trip to Egypt with you. It was life-changing. So I think this is the end of talking about traumas that shaped my life and the impact and effect they had on my psyche, and just how trauma can just splinter you off in every different direction. So if you have experienced any of these traumas or any trauma in your life, I encourage you, because now with all the trauma that's going on around outside of us, it is a perfect time to look inside. And you can begin with just a pencil and a piece of paper and just write, whatever comes up. For me, there was a lot of anger and rage. Sometimes I would just take a drive in a car, out in the country and scream at the top of my lungs. There are many healthy ways. Emotions are not inherently bad. They are when you don't know how to process or not willing to process them, and you project them on others. So I thank you for listening to my journey into trauma and how it's changed my life, and how here I am in my 60s saying I'm grateful to have had these experiences, because I learned so much about frequencies and what's really been taking place on this planet for the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of years. So sending peace and love, more later.